Hey everyone, today I'm going to be talking about the best time to get into contracting. Now, getting into contracting could be a really nervous time, okay? It's really understandable, The biggest fear that most people have is quitting their jobs. But it's important to have an idea of one of the best times to jump in. Now, I want to be clear here. This is fully based on my own experiences and my own observations and everything else. There is a seasonality to this. I know people have written about this before or spoken about this when I've spoken to them because they've been in the game for 10, 15 years or whatever it may be. But again, this is not golden. This is just what I have experienced. So I want to bear that in mind as a huge caveat. Now, like I said, it's very important to make educated guesses about the market, okay? Now, it doesn't mean that these are always going to be the best times or you must only jump in during these times. It just means this is something to acknowledge for yourself and observe when you're moving into the space. Of course, there are going to be some factors that affect all of this stuff. I spoke about this stuff before, whether this is the economy or the rise in tech and AI and automation, whether this is to do related to the Great Resignation or all of this kind of stuff that affect markets, labor markets in general. So bear that in mind when you're going through this whole session. Now, it's important to recognize that a lot of people go into this space blind. That's part of the reason why I do these videos on my YouTube channel talking about this type of portfolio career. And it can be extremely uncomfortable. Okay. Now, it'd be a shame to have a bad view or the wrong view of contracting because of lack of information or the wrong sort of mindset that has been developed within this space. So this is an opportunity to have a better strategy, a better approach, a better way of thinking and applying some of this information so you have as much confidence as possible. That's the whole aim of these videos. Now, as I've stated before, it's really important to have both a generalist strategy and a specialist strategy. And what I mean by that is a specialist strategy is more niche. It means you can be pickier and you can sort of lean into this space when times are better. And a generalist strategy saves you when actually it may be difficult to find contracts, because whether we like it or not, as sexy as contracting sounds, of course there are cons to it. And one of those cons is the fact that you may not be in a position to get what you want all the time. So it's about developing the right personal brand, opportunities, understanding the market, all of that kind of stuff there. So let's dive into it. So today I'm going to be talking about some of the following things. Now, of course, you're in a stronger position when you work with the market, not against it. Okay, we have to understand this is the same for business or whatever you're doing. So working against it is like a huge tide just pushing against you. So today we're going to be talking about number one, the opportunistic times. Number two, the threatening times. Generalist versus specialist. I spoke about this previously in other videos. Seeking out extensions or negotiations, networking with people, and saving money for mentally draining times. Because look, times get difficult, y'all. So let's be real about that. So let's get into the opportunistic times. So opportunistic times, what does that really mean? Well, essentially, during these times, you are more likely going to get more contracting opportunities. And this can only be garnered if you've truly been applying for roles, okay? So opportunities come in so many different ways. These opportunities may come from speaking to different people. These opportunities may come obviously from applying on places like CV Library or PSR, whatever it may be. These are all chances to increase your opportunities, and sometimes you may start this earlier on, hence why the opportunities come in the first place. So bear in mind, like, how you generate opportunities. Don't think, people are just going to contact you out of the blue. If you've never applied for anything, that's not going to happen. So think about what that means. Now, this is usually a time where you can be quite firm with your rates or even try and bump them up a little bit. Nobody has to know. And so if someone's offering you, again, and there's no discrimination with rates, and I don't disrespect any rate, people get the rates that they get, but this is just illustrative. Let's say, for example, someone would like to make £500 a day, but they've been getting offered 400 or 450. You want to push the boat a little bit. You may be saying, okay, what is the budget? What's the full budget? Or what is the max they can offer? You always go for the max. They may be lying to you, but you don't know if they're lying to you. You kind of know based on experience whether you should bump it up or not, or based on what the market is showing, based on CV Library and stuff, or speaking to other people who've got the experience and have been in the game for a while. So this will give you a bit of an idea, and you have to bear these things in mind, obviously. Now, of course, this is dependent upon many factors. Like I said before, the economy, technology, AI, the great resignation, things like COVID, or things like, things that are changing in the economy that affects us, like the Russian war and the Ukraine war, etc., etc. Now, it's important to understand that control what you can. That's the focus. And the things that you can control is negotiations to a degree, your CV, how valuable you are in the marketplace. All of these different things are important, okay? You need to be able to portray that you're not just, let's say, for example, £500 per day worth of money. You're more than that. You come across as a professional and someone who is valuable. So bear all of this in mind. Now, the best way to know what the market is offering is by doing some of the following things. Number one, you can speak to recruiters and really see what is on the market. And obviously, if you've been applying for different roles, which is part two, then you're going to have a bank of recruiters who are calling you or emailing you on a regular basis, especially during this time. Okay, during this time, I'll tell you when is the best time. But essentially, they will sort of say, yeah, we've got roles here, we've got roles there, or this is happening with this organization, X, Y, and Z. Number two, you need to apply for the actual roles. Okay, so this is how you get these calls unless you're introduced by a contractor or whatever it may be. And number three, speaking to other work colleagues. This may be current work colleagues or old work colleagues, okay? They usually have some sort of like, oh, you never guess what, X, Y, and Z said this, blah, blah, blah. So think about all these different opportunities and chances to speak to and or apply for these different roles. Now, I initially found my rate through speaking to one of my contractor friends. They basically said, I think you would be between here and here based on your skill set, because they worked with me. So that's quite useful. And this was backed up based on what I saw in the market and what people were telling me. Now, of course, recruiters may sort of like have their own sort of like strategy. I'm not going to say much about that, but all I can say is you just need to know what you believe you're worth based on all of the information that you've deduced. Okay, so don't bid too low, don't bid too high, just think about what's right for you. Now, just to be transparent with you guys, I got my first contract back in 2021 March, and this was during a time, I think before then in January, where I started to apply more for different things and speak to different agents, etc., etc. And I luckily got an interview, and I was kind of like, wow, like really excited by this but nervous at the same time. And the issue was that obviously when it comes to interviews, there's quick succession. It's usually within 48 hours, if you're lucky, a week. So I thought, okay, I just need to do what I need to do to succeed in this interview. And lo and behold, I failed the interview. I didn't get the job. And I'm kind of happy I didn't get the job. But it's a weird feeling because it's your first one. You need to get out of the way. And it kind of teaches you how you need to be for the next one. So the next opportunity came, and they said to me that actually they like my CV so much that they want me to start straight away. Now, it sounds egotistical and amazing. However, it doesn't necessarily mean that's true. It may just mean that they're so deep in the dunya, okay? Things are going so badly that they need people quickly, and we satisfy the credentials that they need. So here's a little bit of a warning. If people ask you to start straight away without an interview, that may be a red flag to suggest that there is something wrong with the operations and or leadership. Now, I'm not saying that was necessarily the case, but you just don't know, okay? You'll know when you get into the space, or you'll know if you're in the wrong role, or you'll know if something just feels a bit dodgy. So bear that in mind. Now, bringing this all together, I've come to realize that opportunities definitely come through between January up until April, maybe May, but I'd say January to April if I'm being safe, and definitely sort of like mid-September, October to November, okay? And that's where I've seen the most sort of like engagement when it comes to recruiters coming back to me, or emails or calls or whatever it may be. So does it mean the other times are quieter? For me, yes, it has been, over the last 2 years or so. Bearing in mind though, I hadn't been necessarily applying like crazy. So yeah, you could argue it was always going to be quieter, but this is just the sense that I've gained, and I've spoken to other people. They said the same thing. I know some recruiters have said the same thing. And usually when I speak to recruiters, I'm always asking, what does the market feel like? When is the best time? When is the worst time? And obviously it's subject to their experience, but this is what I found. Okay. And, obviously I've been in a situation where I haven't been contracting. So I felt that too as well. And so just so you understand, the opportunistic times for me, at least based on my experience, have been between January to April, and most likely mid-September to November times. So let's talk about threatening times. Now, there are also times where things aren't necessarily going to be that great. Okay, so I didn't necessarily realize this in 2021. This was more so in 2022. And, as I was applying for some roles, during the springtime and the summertime, and I didn't really get much responses. And I think this is due to various different things. I think there's a mix of things happening. So after the sort of like opportunistic times, these are times where contractors and organizations are focusing on delivering the projects that they promised pre sort of like the financial year. So obviously before the 1st of April, and they're focusing on that. During the summer holidays, obviously people may have kids or have people who have kids who influence their activity and lifestyle. So they may be going on holiday and thinking about all of those things in line with the summer holidays. Some people may even start going on holiday once those people are back. So that may extend into August/September times. And so there's going to be variation. When we think about December, people are thinking about festivities. Now, of course, people will sort of like buckle down and work, so to speak, but things start to slip a bit, okay? They start to slip. And you have to remember, this is just the nature of the beast. So think about human patterns, behavior, all of that kind of stuff there. It will be different for different sort of like industries and roles and projects and programs, etc. But this is what happens. Again, during the whole December time, people are experiencing seasonal affective disorder, so SAD. And so with that in mind, there may be less motivation to even be bothered to bring people in or do what they need to do because less people are checking or whatever it may be. Sometimes people just behave differently during the winter. So again, bear this in mind. But they will start thinking about budgets again when it comes to January onwards. So it depends on the organization, it depends on the market, it depends on the roles that you're looking for as well. So just to be clear, based on my experience, I'd say May onwards to sort of like summer, beginning of autumn, I'd say mid-September or up to beginning of September, it can be quiet. And December is also quite a quiet time too. But I just want to draw your attention towards something. This is based on a binomial distribution. So for those of you who remember your maths, things start off quite low and they speed up and then it hits a peak and then it goes back down again, as you can see in this graph. So there is a gradual acceleration and then it slows down. Now, it's not going to be a perfect binomial distribution. This is just illustrative, but it just gives you an idea of what this looks like. And this is both for the opportunistic and the threatening times as well. Now, let's focus on this whole generalist and specialist thing. Now, there is an argument to be said that you can just apply for generalist roles whenever if you're not that fussed, and that's definitely true. And this is what this shows. But it's also important to apply for specialist roles. Now, if you're trying to craft your own portfolio career, it makes sense to focus on things that make more sense to you, that really ignite what you're curious in or you're passionate about or whatever it may be. So again, specialist sort of roles are specific to opportunistic times mainly, okay? And generalist roles are for both. This is another way of saying if you only do specialist roles and it's hard to find a generalist role, then you're going to thrive more in opportunistic times and it'll be harder for you to find something in threatening times. And this is why you need to be a very, very good financial person because, again, it won't just be based on experience, skill, all of this kind of stuff there and character. It will be more about what the market is saying. And the market is the market whether you like it or not. Being a generalist can either make you anxious or enthusiastic. This is because you're entering unknown territories at times. And so, you may not be in the industry that you're used to being in, which is health as an example. So you have to also recognize that there are a lot of like management consultants who do this as well. So people who work for Ernst & Young and Deloitte and KPMG, PwC, Bain, all these different big, amazing companies, they're trained to just be thrown into different places and spaces within a remit, so to speak, to just do all these different types of things. Now, the market is dynamic and it responds to the results you produce, or have at least said you produce through your interview or CV. So over time, when you build on skills and your experience and all that kind of stuff, it compounds, thereby sort of like boosting your personal brand. And I'm saying this to say that if you can boost your personal brand and you boost your sense of value, then you're more likely going to be positioned for better roles, bigger roles, whatever it may be. So boosting your brand is an important aspect to this. Next, we're going to focus on seeking extensions or negotiations. Now, like I stated before in my journey, obviously I, quit my previous role and I spoke to different experts and all this kind of stuff there and transitioned into the space, blah, 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 blah. I was able to stay in the same organization for 18 months. And I believe that was the case because I produced enough value, Now, you could argue it's because they needed people. Yeah, that's true. But why me? I saw people got let go. And so there must have been something that I was doing that enabled them to believe in me as a person, believe in me to provide the value. This is not to produce a big head. This is just what I've seen with myself and other people. And so value is produced through a sense of confidence, a sense of willingness, a sense of understanding, a sense of cooperation, collaboration, a sense of professionalism. These are all things that will help you stay within a space. I say this to say that I got extended 4 times because of that. So that's how you get extended. Now, you can ask people and say, is there an extension? And I know there are times where I continuously ask, what's happening with extensions? Is there a possibility to be extended X, Y, and Z? Not in a begging, can you do this for me sort of way, so that I know what I'm doing and I know how to move on. In addition to that, you can negotiate. Now, I haven't negotiated after terms, but I know people within my space who have done this successfully because, again, they had enough value to show that actually, no, I should be getting paid X based on what the market is saying. So these are bargaining chips that you have in mind, but you have more power when you produce more value. That's a matter of fact. And that's not always going to work, but it's more likely to work in your favor. The key point here is that don't rule it out at all, because you never know what could happen, okay? It's dependent on multiple different factors. Just think strategically and professionally about whether this makes sense to do right now or not, okay? It totally depends on all of those different things. We need to talk about networking with people. Now, what does this actually mean? Networking with people really means connecting and communicating with people. And usually when this happens, it comes down to doing 2 things. People start to talk about themselves, and if they do, they talk about work life or general life. And number 2, they ask how you're doing. And this is an opportunity to not have a script, but to be clear that you are seeking new opportunities. You may like it where you are, but you're looking for something else. You don't like where you are and looking for something else. People will respond to you emotionally because they want to be able to say that they helped someone. People get satisfaction from that, whether that is an altruistic trait or a self-fueling trait. No one knows. It doesn't really matter. If you get a result from it, that's what matters, okay? And so it's important for you to, again, have some of the following sort of like traits. Be a great listener, ask great questions, show support and encouragement and good listening skills, okay? Let them know honestly what is happening in your life. It's really, really good to talk, because when you don't open your mouth to say what's happening in your space, then people are not going to know. Now, sometimes I understand that you don't always have to share this information and stuff, but this is your business. This is your career. So you kind of have to be a bit more vulnerable and honest about how things are happening for you or where you're at with certain things, okay? This is not a strategy, so to speak. This is something you should be doing anyway, okay? Talk to people. Don't shell up. Because in this space, it's about getting to know different people. You can't just rely on applications all the time. 9 times out of 10, I'm successful in a space because of someone I've spoken to. Again, I'm probably on my 5th contract now, and 4 of them, you could argue, based on those extensions, were due to other people, not because I applied for other stuff. So this one was because I applied. It's a different story altogether. So I get a bit of validation there. So really bear this in mind. You should also respond to emails of people who are messaging you, okay? Agents, other recruiters who are basically, seeing if you're still in the market. And depending on, let's say, for example, you're still working, okay? Let's say you're still working, but you just want to keep your options open. Here's something that you could say, okay? So, dear name, thank you for your email regarding whatever role it is. I'm currently working as a, whatever your role is currently right now, on whatever your day rate is or the range. Now, you don't have to say what this is. Usually, if I say this, it's because they've given me a day rate that I feel like doesn't match what I'm trying to do. So let's say, for example, theoretically, I was on £1,000 a day, but they're offering me £600 a day. I will say what my range is. My range is between £800 to £1,000 a day, as an example. So, if there are any opportunities in the future, then feel free to let me know. And this is what the last part of their message says. So this gives you an idea of how you can phrase it, so to speak. So always keep in contact, even if it feels like, oh, what's the point? You just never know. This is why there are threatening times. This is why there are opportunistic times. We also need to talk about saving money for mentally draining times. What does this actually mean? Now, you have to be able to save an emergency fund. You just have to. It's not negotiable by any means necessary. Being a professional means you are managing your finances and accounting for all different types of scenarios. So what if you find yourself out of work during a threatening time? Like, what happens when you do that? And I found myself in that situation. You know, in one of my previous contracts, the values didn't align anymore. So I decided to hand in my notice. Now, I could have stayed. The advice was definitely to stay. But in my mind, I was like, I can't. I need to support my well-being first. Because I have that right as a contractor. I literally said I don't have to be here. And I handed in my notice, and that was that. It is what it is. Did I regret it? Never. Because in some ways I planned for it. I had enough of my own personal savings and obviously my side hustle with the coaching and all of that kind of stuff to supplement me. But also I had a joint emergency fund with my partner as well. So I was prepared for a situation like that. Now, it's annoying when you use it for situations like that, but it's there. That's the point. So don't be afraid to use it when you need to use it. We don't want to use it willy-nilly. You need to be conservative and sensible when it comes to the finances, but also your health as well. So just never ever like assume everything is always going to be, you know, great and amazing and all that kind of stuff there. That's just not how life works. So I want to be 100 with you guys. So when thinking about saving, think about this as an example. This is a really, really light touch illustration, okay? So let's say, for example, you get paid £500 a day inside IR35, so you're treated more like an employee, so to speak. And after tax, you bring in about 1,300. This is very conservative, rough illustrations, okay? Because tax is the thing, whether you like it or not. For those of you who are versed already, you already know that if you're outside of IR35, then the tax is lower, you get more money, all of that kind of stuff there. But this is just for most people who are within the space. Let's say your expenses are £1,000 a month. So obviously 1,300 is what you're getting a week. £1,000 is what you're spending a month, so to speak. So you could save, let's say £500, okay, which is £2,000 a month. And you'll be left over per week, £800, which is £3,200 to spend. So this is all to say, there's a lot that you can do with this kind of stuff, okay? And again, this is not real figures by any means. I'm only showing you this so you understand the mechanism of how you could save. Now, if it becomes difficult to save or you're not sure if you like this mechanism, maybe aim to save your day rate every week. That helps, okay? That keeps you on track, and that keeps you not spending your money on foolishness, okay? We've got all these dreams and stuff and all that kind of stuff there, but at the end of the day, you need to be sensible. Now, this is not the same for everybody, okay? There are some people who are in partnerships. There are some people who are by themselves. You have to do what makes sense for you, okay? And my situation is not the same as your situation. So you have to bear this in mind, okay? If your partner's saving and you're saving and you're working together, fantastic killer combo, fantastic. So to summarize, here are some points I want you to consider. So the first thing is opportunistic times are when you thrive really and truly, okay? So capitalize on the moments that you know are fruitful seasons. And like I said, Jan to April and mid-September to November times, based on my experience and what other people have said. The second thing is threatening times build character, okay? So prepare for them. You just never know what's going to happen. The third thing is be both a generalist and a specialist. Okay, it'll help you during these opportunistic and threatening times, and you can pick and choose. But obviously, generalist allows you to kind of be wherever you need to be, but it doesn't mean that it's spaces that you want to be in. The next thing is to seek extensions and negotiations, especially when it comes to, let's say, for example, nearing the end of your contract, and that is during a threatening time. This is where you want to hang tight, okay? So think about all of these different things. Following on from that, network with people all the time. So this is really communicating and connecting with people, getting to know them and sharing your sort of like situation. And finally, you want to be able to save money for mentally draining times, because you just never know what could happen. Of course, it's not just for mentally draining times. Other things could happen, but get comfortable saving. It's really important. So if this resonates with you, and if this is something that, yeah, I need to start doing this, especially during this time, and you've got a notice period that is favorable, or you're seeing redundancy soon, and you could be getting voluntary redundancy or whatever it may be, then maybe you want to check out my course. Now, I've spoken about this in my previous videos, The Independent Consultant. So this is a guide for becoming a contractor within the UK, and this is based on my experiences, breaking down a lot of the different structures, understanding all of the different types of rules and policies and all that kind of stuff there, and giving you a better chance of succeeding within the space. So again, if this is something that you're interested in, if this is something that you're serious about, then check out this course below and get started on it ASAP, because again, this is the best time, as I'm filming it. Now, of course, if you're interested in learning more about portfolio careers, life management, or positive psychology, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. And as always, my friends, understand, reach, and expand. Peace.